going on, guys? It's Tuesday morning here in California. It's a beautiful day. I'm out running errands before I realized I hadn't spoken with you guys yet about last week's poker session. Now I'm referring to Wednesday night, aka Wacky Wednesday. That's the new thing going on at Hustler on Wednesdays, and all that means is there's a bunch of side games going on like all the time. There's straddles, the stand-up game, the bounty game, which means if you win multiple hands in a row, you get some extra money. So needless to say, there's tons of action in this particular type of game, and I had a really big result. I'm not going to spoil anything else besides that. Now, before we get into the poker, I wanted to say thanks to all you guys who came out to my band's first show this past Saturday at the Viper Room. You guys can see here, we were completely sold out. And it was really, really fun for my first ever performance as a drummer. We're going to do more of these. We actually just got booked for the Troubadour in April. That's another major venue here in LA. And yeah, things are going quite well with that side project. But aside from music, aside from Deer Delta, let's talk about poker. We're going to cover some hands and I'll chat with you guys right after.
All right, let's get to it. Blinds today are 25.50, somewhat irrelevant considering all the side games. But anyway, I sit down with $30,000. There is a max in this game for the first 2 hours. It's $30K, and then after that, it becomes uncapped. As if this game didn't have enough weird rules already. Anyway, in this one, Sandor opens up the action of $300. I believe the straddle was on from yours truly. Henry now re-raises in the big blind to $1,300, and we are going to start the night off with some fireworks right away. As I look down at King 7 suited, we have position to Henry, who I think could be re-raising Sandor with a bunch of different hands. So even though King 7 suited is obviously not something you want to do this every time with, I decide to spring into action with a re-raise. It's going to be really tough for Henry to navigate with so many of those hands if he decides to continue. Sandor gets out of the way, and after some thought, Henry makes the call. So we go heads up in position to a flop of 9-6 deuce with a flush draw out there. Not too concerning given the pre-flop action. Henry checks, and I continue with a small bet of 2,000. Worth noting, I would do this with all my hands, which of course also includes overpairs. Henry makes the call with ace high, which is a bit optimistic as he has no backdoor flush draw, but here we go. Turn card is the deuce of hearts. Henry checks it a second time, and at this point we have to decide whether or not we want to continue telling our story, and I just think we have a great hand to do that with. We don't have removal to ace high, which is a lot of the hands we'd want him to fold, and of course, like I said earlier, I could have many overpairs. All of those would continue betting here for value, so I continue with a bet of $8,000. Pretty much asking myself, what is the amount I would bet if I had a value hand? So that's the amount I go with. Henry thinks about it for quite some time, but eventually decides that he's had enough, perhaps thinking that the river would just be too tricky to navigate, and I don't really blame him. He lets it go, and we take this one down with king high. Not a bad start. A few rounds later, a similar situation arises where action gets all the way to Sandor on the button. He raises it up to 500. This time I am in the double straddle, so the blinds are 25, 50, 100, 200. And then Benji re-raises in the small blind to 1,500. Quite a small re-raise, but I think it makes sense considering that he's not very deep. Action gets all the way to me in the straddle, like I said, and I have queen 10 of diamonds. Not really a great hand when you're facing a raise and a re-raise, but considering that I think Sandor could be opening really wide and Benji might be hesitant to go all in with a not premium holding, I think it's okay to get frisky this time, so I'll go for another raise. However, since both players don't have much behind, I think the only size that actually makes sense here is an all-in. Of course, this isn't a great play, but giving some action here with a hand that probably has some decent equity is not the worst thing either, so I jam it all in there. Sandor folds ace-5, but Benji is going nowhere with ace-jack suited, and as predicted, we are slightly behind, but I'm okay with it. Anyway, we go off to a flop, running it just once since this pot isn't too big. Flop comes down queen jack 9 with 2 diamonds. Yeah, that's just overkill. We have top pair, a straight draw, a flush draw, a straight flush draw, you name it, we've probably got it. Benji's only got middle pair, and unfortunately for him, he finds no improvement, so we get a little bit lucky and take this pot down as well. Smooth sailing so far. In this next one, Efan raises up the action to $300, and I am looking down at ace 5 suited on the button, worthy of a raise once again, so I make it $1,000 to go. Action gets back around to Efan, and he makes the call, so we go heads up to a board of 9-7-3 with a flush draw out there. There is one heart, but on this kind of board texture, I think mixing between continuing to bet and checking back are both good options. This time I decide to check it back, and we see the 3 of hearts on the turn, improving us to the nut flush draw. Also have the overcard to go along with it. Efan now bets 1,000, and of course I am not going anywhere. A raise here might be interesting, but it doesn't really make too much sense because all the hands that would be raising on this turn probably should have just bet on the flop. For that reason, I don't think we're getting too many folds. I just call, looking for, of course, any help on the river, and we get there. It's the Jack of Hearts. Running hot today. Unfortunately, Efan now slows down with a check. Now it's time to go for value. The question is, how much do we want to bet? And I think a big bet is in order here, just in case I had any bluffs like missed diamonds, missed straight draws, whatever. All those hands would want to apply some pressure on this kind of board, so doing that with a value hand makes sense to me. I bet the size of the pot, $4,200. Efan thinks for a while and decides that he's going to keep me honest. Doesn't want to get bluffed with his pocket 4s, and the diamonds on the flop did miss, so perhaps his curiosity is a bit piqued by that. He makes the call, and that's good news, of course, as we've got the nut flush. We take this pot down as well. So far, everything is going as well as it possibly could. Let's see if that continues. Here, the 200 is on once more. I look down at pocket queens first to act. I raise it to $500 and get called by Efan and Henry out of the blinds. So 3 ways to a flop. Comes down Jack, 3, deuce, rainbow. Nothing to be worried about here aside from, I guess, pocket 2s and pocket 3s, but can't be scared of monsters under the bed. They both check to me, and I am just going to keep betting because I have a good hand. It's not rocket science. I put in $1,000. Efan gets out of the way, but Henry comes along with ace high. Once again, a little too curious for his own good, and especially so when he hits the 8 of clubs on the turn, now improving to a pair. His bluff catcher is now better than just a bluff catcher. He checks, and I am going to continue betting because queens are a good hand. Make sure to subscribe for more advanced poker tips like that. Jokes aside, I think a big bet here is definitely the play now that a flush draw has arrived. I would just have so many bluffs and different kinds of hands that want to continue applying pressure. It's kind of a great spot to overbet with a strong hand and get maximum value. So I bet like pot and a half or whatever this is, $4,700. Henry thinks for a bit, and now that he's got an 8, decides that he's still not done with this one. I don't blame him. I think it's a pretty good hand to call down with at this point, but the river comes the 10 of spades, and when he checks, I am going to keep betting. I mean, yeah, we lose to Jack 10 at this point, or perhaps a hand like, I don't know, Jack 8 that traps on the turn. But aside from those hands, I mean, we still just have an amazing holding. Pocket queens on this kind of run out is awesome. And if he's got 2 pairs, so be it. So the question is, how much do we want to bet? And I think the answer is, once again, a big size. Similar to the previous hand, if I had any sort of bluff, like say ace 5 suited, ace 4 suited, maybe even a hand like ace deuce that decides to go crazy, which I might do from time to time, all those hands would want to bet big, so I'm going to target maximum value the times that I actually do have it, like this one. Henry now goes into the tank for quite some time, and I don't blame him. This is a miserable spot with an 8, but I think at the end of the day, he probably just has to let this one go. If he had a jack, probably call, but 8 is just a little bit too weak. That's just my opinion. I don't know how this guy is thinking about poker, but what I do know is that he eventually folds. We almost had it, but he makes the correct fold. Nice laydown from him. Still always good to hold with pocket queens. We win this one as well. All right, now we arrive at what I think is the hand of the session. One of the weirdest pots I've played in recent memory. Here we go. In this one, Sandor opens up the action to 300. Benji re-raises on his left to 1,000. And then it gets to me in the small blind with 8-7 suited. Now, I know what you're thinking. This is just a fold, and on paper, you are absolutely right. But given the table dynamics so far, I have a good image. I think Benji could be picking on Sandor with a bunch of good but not great hands, like exactly what's going on here. He's got king queen offsuit, and 8-7 suited, playable hand, all that. I decide to get in there. Worth noting, you should not do this every time. In fact, you should do this almost never, probably in your local games, but Under very special circumstances, I think it's okay, and this is one of those situations. So I make it $3,000 with my 8-7 of hearts. Of course, hoping to avoid an all-in. If Benji goes all in, I'm going to have no choice but to most likely fold. But that's not what happens. Instead, Sandor folds, and now Benji does the unexpected. He puts in a min raise. Well, technically a little more than a min raise, but you guys get the idea. He makes it $6,000. Essentially pricing me in with almost any two cards. You could argue that, you know, some hands might actually fold against this, like say, I don't know, King Jack suited or whatever, hands that are just completely dominated. But a hand like 8-7 suited, getting odds like these, we just have to pay the extra $3,000 and go to a flop. Now, this min raise from Benji looks super strong, but I know this guy can be tricky sometimes, so I'm still not assigning him a premium like aces or pocket kings, even though it definitely looks like it could be that. Okay, so I make the call. There's around 12,500 in the middle, and we go to a flop. It's 5-4 deuce with a flush draw. Unfortunately, not a single heart out there, but we do have two overcards if my man does not have an overpair. And of course, the straight draw, if a 6 were to come, that would give us the nuts. I check, and now Benji bets $3,000. As if this hand wasn't odd enough already, what do we want to do here? Well, he's only got 10K behind. I think a jam all-in would look a little too bluffy, so instead I decide to do something very unorthodox and make the call. That's right, we're floating with 8 high out of position with plans of leading the turn and targeting folds from ace and king highs. Is that absurd? I think it is absurd. But for whatever reason, I just had this vibe that he was not very strong. Sometimes it's hard for me to quantify exactly what I'm picking up at the table and just kind of like, you know, the energy I'm getting. Sometimes I'm wrong, which I've showcased here as well, but sometimes I'm right. And luckily, this is one of those times. Turn card is the 10 of hearts, and I stick with the plan. I jam all in with 8-7 suited here. And the second we don't get snap called, I am happy with the decision. If he does eventually make the call with ace high and just decides to, you know, be a hero, then he deserves the money. But if we get him to lay down ace high, king high, whatever he might have, then of course that is a great outcome. And luckily, after a minute or two, that is what happens. Benji looks down at his king queen and makes the fold. I don't blame him. I mean, how could you possibly call with king queen offsuit here? You even lose to a bunch of bluffs. But yeah, this hand was just hilarious. Probably my favorite one of the stream, and we win this $29,000 pot. So in case you guys haven't noticed by now, my usual MO when playing at Hustler Casino Live in lineups that involve a bunch of guys who, you know, aren't trying super hard. My MO is to try really hard and do well, but also not try so hard, give action, and kind of ride the line between playing well and being good for the game. This is yet another one of those hands which I think shows that to you guys. I raised it up to $400 with 6-5 offsuit, with apparently no good reason as to why I did this. But anyway, EFAN now in the straddle puts in a re-raise to $1,800. Not the biggest re-raise ever, considering how deep we are and the fact that he's out of position. I make the call, obviously knowing that I'm behind, but if we hit something, you know, we might be able to get paid. And of course, we've got position, which is great. So we go to a flop of Jack 7-5 with 2 spades. EFAN now checks it, which I think more often than not is going to indicate an ace high sort of hand like ace king or ace queen. I've got bottom pair, so I bet for some value / protection now. $1,200. EFAN floats with ace king high, which I think makes sense. And we see an awful turn card. It's the king of clubs. EFAN now checks, and I decide to check it back because, like I said, this card just sucks. River is the 3 of hearts, and now EFAN assembles a bet of $4,600. Back to me now, and here you can see why you probably shouldn't play hands like these. It's just tough to win, you know, but yeah, this is one of the worst hands I would have in this situation. Despite having a pair, I just don't think it's quite strong enough to call. I could easily have river 2 pair sometimes, or of course have turned to king and checked it back. All better hands to call with. And raising is just out of the question, given that, you know, I checked back the turn. So, yeah, I just let this one go, and luckily it was the right fold this time. I did think maybe we were getting bluffed by ace-queen. I'm happy to see that was not the case. The very next shuffle, we get the best remedy available, though. It's pocket aces. And not just that, there's already a raise ahead of me. Henry makes it $400. I, of course, I'm going to re-raise. I make it $1,600. Action gets to Sandor now in the small blind, and he decides that he's all in. for 15,000 and change. Nothing quite like having pocket aces and having someone else go all in. Henry lets go of his king queen. I, of course, I'm going nowhere. I've got the best possible hand, man. I make the call. Pot's a little over 30,000, all in pre-flop with aces. Like I said, always great when you're able to, be in that situation. Sandor wants to run it twice. I usually don't have a problem with going once or twice, although I do prefer one time. But here we go. We're going to run it twice. Aces versus pocket jacks. And man, good thing we ran it twice because the first board has a jack right away. No help for us on the turn or river, so off to a second board. Only a jack could save him, or of course some sort of weird flush or straight, but pretty much a jack. And what do you know? He hits the other jack on the second flop. I mean, what the hell? I'm usually not on the bad end of these. I mean, this is just ridiculous. Turn card is a 5, river is a 6, and just like that, we get scooped. Pocket aces versus jacks. 2 boards. We're unable to hold on either one. I guess the only silver lining here is that Sandor is one of the nicest dudes in poker. This guy has been nothing but supportive for me since the very start. As you guys can see, he's actually wearing a Dear Delta hoodie. That's right, the man went to the shop, ordered himself a hoodie, and it got delivered. Now he's wearing it on stream. You too can wear Dear Delta merch if you just go to I'm just kidding. But yeah, he's a really cool guy, and I guess that's kind of the only good thing about this hand is I lost to him. But still not awesome, losing with pocket aces. That's how it goes, though. I've been running pretty hot all session. Sometimes variance has a funny way of evening out. But that said, there's plenty of poker left to be played. A couple more interesting hands to talk to you guys about. A few minutes later, the situation comes up where everyone folds, and it gets to Benji. He's in the small blind and he says, I am all in for $4,800. I am in the $200 straddle, so I'm going to be last to act pre-flop. Efan folds, Henry folds, and I look down at 7-5 offsuit. Yeah. There's an all-in ahead, and I have 7-5 offsuit. What the hell is this hand doing in the vlog? Well, you guys can probably guess where this is going. Primarily because I'm just going to be blunt. I've been dunking on Benji all night long. I've been bluffing him. I've been sucking out. I've been value betting. I've just got like the better of him all night long. There's a few pots that I haven't shown you guys, many little bluffs and stuff like that. So almost as an apology / for the memes and LOLs, I decide, let's do it. I am all in as well with you, Benji. Let's give the man some action. He's had a rough night. 7-5 off versus what I'm happy to see is King 9. I did ask him pre-flop if a 7 and a 5 were alive. I just didn't want him to have a hand like Ace 7, for example, or Ace 5. But Benji was kind enough to let me know that he did not have a 7 or a 5. So I am in there. Nearly 10,000 in the middle. He wants to run it twice. Here we go. First board comes ace high, but we make a 5 on the turn. We hold on the river, so we're getting at least half this pot back. Unfortunately, on the second board, he hits a king, and we can't improve. So all that for pretty much nothing. We just chop the blinds. Still a pretty funny moment. And with that, we arrive at the biggest hand of the stream and also the last one for today. So here we go. This hand comes up exactly 1 round later. As you guys can see, I am once again in the double straddle for $200. Action is on Shimmy, who came in around an hour or 2 ago. He's sitting with $35,000 and he opens the button to $1,400. Everyone folds, but when it gets back to me, I look down at pocket tens. Interesting situation because Shimmy is technically under the gun since he was first to act pre-flop. Usually that indicates a strong hand, but at the same time, he's on the button. So usually that doesn't indicate a very strong hand, right? People play a lot of hands on the button. So what do we want to make of this $1,400 raise? How do we want to proceed? A call here would be okay, but I think tens are just a little bit too strong in this situation. Honestly, a little too passive for my taste. If we were playing 9-handed and there was only 2 blinds, maybe I would just call with tens, but short-handed, a bunch of straddles, you guys get where I'm going. I raise it up. I make it $5,800 to go. Don't want to go too big and make it look like I'm committed if he jams, but also don't want to go too small and give him a great price on the button since, he does have position. So I make it $5,800, and now Shimmy goes into the tank for a little while. Sizing up his stack, at this point I notice he's got like 35,000 left, and I'm already thinking to myself, what are we going to do if he jams all in? I think about it while he's thinking, and I decide, I'm going with it. Many worse hands that he might jam with, like 2 overcards, and of course he might just say the hell with it with a hand like pocket 9s or pocket 8s. Of course he could also bluff, you know? Sometimes people go crazy with hands like ace 5 suited, which by the way is overrated, but you know, we don't have to go down that rabbit hole. Anyhow, after about a minute, Shimmy does go all in. 35,000. Well, I'm going to stick to the plan. If he's got a bigger pocket pair, so be it. My fate is sealed. I make the call, and just like that, we have the biggest pot of the stream tonight. 72,000 and change. He asked to run it twice. As per usual, I agree. Off to the first board, on which we flop middle set. Turn card is a king, which might be a little bit sketchy, and then it gets worse. River is a 9. But Shimmy says that he's got king 10. That, of course, is great news. We're just looking to dodge a king on the second board. It comes low. Turn card is low. River card also low. We actually have a full house. Yeah, excellent runouts on both boards. And just like that, we are up a bunch on the night. Shimmy, you know, he went for gusto, but unfortunately he ran into a good hand. I can't really blame him, though, because I've been turning over so many ridiculous hands tonight that it's tough for him to really assume I have something, you know, but luckily we did this time. And just like that, we have a bunch of chips. The stream ended shortly after this. As always, I hope you guys enjoyed the hands and stay tuned for some final thoughts.
Yeah, so as you guys saw, it was quite the eventful session for me. A lot of weird hands. I guess that's the nature of playing these strange side games and just playing on Hustler in general. It's usually more action-packed than your typical game. But all that aside, I'm happy to report good things. Once again, we're on a bit of a heater at the start of 2025. I won $61,000 or $62,000 across the 5 hours that we played. Of course, that's an amazing result, and it's on the back of 2 consecutive 6-figure wins this month. So a lot of good results lately. You guys know how poker is, though. Things can come and go at any given moment. So I'm definitely not, you know, trying to get overconfident, but I am enjoying the ride, and I'm quite happy with the way things have gone so far. Now, this upcoming weekend, I'm actually going to Austin. I'll be playing at the Lodge once again, 1 or 2 live streams. Next vlog will cover that. So for those of you guys who enjoy the Texas sessions, there's some fun videos coming up. And then after that, I am going to Vegas for a few days where I think I will try to play either at the Aria or at the Wynn, maybe Bellagio. I never really know. I just kind of go there and figure it out once I arrive. But anyway, that's the upcoming itinerary, if you will. As always, thank you guys for watching. Thanks for the support. And again, for all you guys who came out to support Dear Delta at the Viper Room, much love, much appreciated. And I'll keep you guys posted for the next shows if anyone wants to come listen to some live music. That's all I got. Until next time, good luck at your local tables. Peace.